Awesome. Thank you for joining us here at Mindpoint. This is the podcast which talks about various topics in relation to mental health and wellness. Thank you guys for joining me. My name's Justin. I'm the chairman of Love Yourself Canada and lived experience professional. This is my co-host, Rob.
My name is Rob Hansen. I am the resident media guru, I suppose we would call me. I handle all of the video, audio needs for the charity and the various events that we do.
Perfect. And this is our guest host today, Dee. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Dee?
Sure. I'm a registered psychotherapist. I'm also apparently the executive director of Daya Counselling Centre, one of our local psychotherapy centers that tries to offer access to mental health services to our community on a sliding scale and at affordable rates.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming to our show today. So I do believe the topic of discussion today is seasonal depression. I think it's appropriate as today is minus 10 degrees Celsius and snowing. So it's a great day to be having this conversation. Just to get us started, I'll just kind of give my spiel on the topic in general. So as an extrovert, I find seasonal depression can get quite antsy for me in the winter, not being able to go outside, socialize, get out of my house, something that extroverts kind of really use a lot to help balance out some mental health. And so like seasonal depression, isolation in general, tends to be something that I really need to be like watching because I can fall into a seasonal depression situation quite easily. So for me, I just try to keep myself busy. I'm usually doing a lot of planning, but it's always kind of tough. You almost kind of don't see it coming a little bit.
Yeah. So that's a really good point about seasonal affective disorder. SAD, really lovely name. I'm just like, how did that work? Did you lie that up? So some of the really interesting clinical information about this. One of my mentors back in the day had this saying, there's a difference between like a bad day and a bad life, which is just like being sad or feeling lethargic or having really difficulties in the winter or when the seasons change is perfectly normal. It doesn't always mean that like you're suffering from like seasonal affective disorder or SAD. I think statistically it affects like maybe 1 to 5% of the population. And if you experience something like major depressive disorder or bipolar, you're more likely to be susceptible to it. So I think that the rate increases to like maybe 25%. But yeah, so it's one of those things. It's like lethargic, difficulty focusing, difficulties remembering things, low energy, low mood. But that's kind of like, it's kind of normal to feel that in the summer because we're not designed to be like
It's an ebb and flow kind of thing, right? You can't be at 100% all the time. And if you overwork yourself, you're going to burn out and things kind of snowball, right?
And like hunter-gatherer days, yeah.
Lack of motivation leads to, it's going to affect your sleep patterns, which is going to affect your eating habits. It's all going to make you even less motivated. It's very easy to get into ruts like that.
Well, and even easier like for just like someone who might not even be, as prone to, bouts of depression, or someone who's not, in the mind frame, maybe more of an autistic mind frame, right? So like if like someone who's hyper focused like me struggles with even just those nuances, it's got to be like an even bigger wave of stressful energy for someone that's more prone to having that affect them in a deeper way, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because it's very much so it's very much that idea of sorry might be sick. Okay, it's fine.
No worries, it's seasonal. It's seasonal. So,
it's seasonal.
Yeah, it's all seasonal.
Someone's gonna get sick sometime. Yeah. So what it is very much like what you're saying, where humans normally are less engaged and energetic and active in some wintertime because we can't be, right? It's one of those things, everyone normally slows down and everyone normally gets a little bit like it's harder to do things because snow and winter and everything's cold. And probably not surprising, the people who do the best or who don't get affected as much are those who are the most active, right, in the wintertime, and they love winter sports and they love going outside, and it's like, okay, well, and they're less prone to susceptible, right? But it's one of those things where it's normal to not be like as active. It's normal to find it harder to get in or get up or get going, right? So it's one of those things where, and this is why I was saying, like my mentor used to say, bad day, bad life, where it's like, just because you have a sluggish day or it's not, you're feeling off a few days, you don't have to go like, oh my gosh, I'm suffering from sad and right? Like I need to get like right? If it's persistent and it keeps going, that's when you probably want to see like professional help and like medical professionals.
Yeah, so I've always sort of had the attitude of powering through things.
Yeah.
And so I've had what I would describe as depression or depressive state, but I've never been analyzed or diagnosed with anything. When I was younger, it would always come in waves, right? A couple of weeks on, a couple of weeks off, I'd be okay. And then it would come back. And I used to think, it was something that I could just get over and beat at some point. And it took me a few years to realize that that's not really how it works. It's kind of always going to be there, and it will crop up every now and again. Even if I go a year or a couple years without really experiencing a wave, as I call them, eventually it always seems to come back at some point.
I've actually always been curious specifically about the connection between what we're experiencing mentally during the winter and how that's relating to our physical health. You know what I mean? Yeah. So sleep, exercise, all those things we would normally be putting energy into, like, where's that energy going at that point, right?
Yeah. So it's this really so a lot of the things that you're going to get taught to do to like help manage depression or is like they're very cliched sounding. Exercise, get some sleep, nutrition, avoid mood altering substances and all that stuff, right? So there's two kind of thoughts, and I have like my personal opinion on this, right? It's like you were saying, anything that you do kind of takes effort and energy, right? Like it takes time, it takes energy. And when you innately feel down or innately feel depressed and you're trying to like get out of the funk, get out of the slump, and you like have to force yourself to do something, right? That's exhausting, right? So it's just burning resources, right? And you're kind of hoping that it kind of like gets you through, so when you're out of that state and your system that kind of naturally equalizes, you feel better. But it's one of those things where this is really, how to explain this? Basically conservation of energy, right? Like you have to do something and it goes somewhere and it just goes out into the ether, right? And you're kind of trading it off with the hope of like dopamine or serotonin boost, so you feel better.
Some sort of reward or benefit.
Yeah. And then I think it's one of those things where it's like, what people probably want to remember is not have a fear of not feeling well, right? Because a lot of people go like, I recognize I'm not doing well, and they spend so much time and effort and energy like trying to course correct that it's like, oh no, you're just sad because...
Or they'll kind of catastrophize things and sort of get themselves further into a funk by just dwelling in it.
I will say, I've always said that it's perfectly natural for someone like me to have the hibernation moments in the winter. Yeah. And so like it really is like not uncommon or unnatural to be both mentally and physically exhausted in the winter, because your energy is actually going towards just dealing with not having the other tools at your disposal, to have those reward releases.
Yeah, and like you were saying, like everything else, like if you think about like hunter-gatherer days way back when, it's harder to go and hunt and plant crops and gather crops and do all the things you need, build shelters and da 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 da. And in modern day times, it's harder to go to the store and da 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 da, right? Like exercising, if you enjoy walks, going out in nature, right? You have to bundle up. It takes a lot longer to go out. You don't want to stay out as long, right? There's not as much light, right? So,
Yeah, it's crazy how all those little tiny details affect you. Like just the
Every
amount of
day.
sunlight that you
Yeah.
get each day.
Even just how you get to work every day. Like I walk 6 blocks to work. It's not that bad. We've had a lot of blizzards this year, and like I'm definitely in a better mood when I don't have to walk through a blizzard than when I do have to walk through a blizzard. And that's been made very apparent in the last few weeks of like the days where it's nicer. I have more energy. I'm more focused. You know what I mean? I can handle collaborations with my bosses here. Whereas days where we both struggle to get to work versus even driving versus walking, you can tell the energy itself in the office is just a much lower level. People are a little less interested in having those creative, collaborative conversations.
yeah.
Yeah, and so you were mentioning that you have a hard time being by yourself or dealing with that isolation. I'm very much the opposite. I very much enjoy my alone time and my isolation. And so that presents a problem for me when it goes too far, right? I've been alone for too long. You're always going to eventually feel that loneliness.
Well, I can probably recognize it faster than you can because I hate it so much that I really can see it coming from really far away, right?
Yeah, whereas me, I'm very much the opposite, where it takes me too long to realize it, and then I kind of get into a spot where I feel like I can't even reach out to everyone because it's been so long, and I'm very bad at keeping up with my friends.
Is there maybe a cycle there too? Because like I've noticed other people too where they're like the seasonal depression actually ends up making it harder for them to then reach out to people and then start doing those things again even as winter starts to end, because they're burnt out from the seasonal depression itself.
Kind of. Yeah, like what you're describing, a lot of the thing is so this thing is like depression, anxiety, super logical, right? Like we give this example all the time with anxiety, and it happens with anxiety, depression as well, where it's like the reasoning is very, very logical, right? Talk about like catastrophizing, and you mentioned catastrophizing, where it's like, oh, I failed a test, so I'm going to quote unquote like it's the end of the world.
Yeah, I'm gonna fail at everything in life now, and I should just give up.
But then the example that we normally give and we normally share is like, okay, no one, like when you fail a test, no one's like, okay, this is the end of the world. But it's a thought process that leads to like, oh, I failed a test, right? Therefore, I'm going to not do well in this class. If I don't do this well in this class, then I'm not going to graduate. If I don't graduate, I'm not going to get into the program that I want. If I don't get into the program I want, I can't get a job that I want. If I can't get a job that I want, then I'm not going to have like the life or relationships or family that I want. And then I'm going to die alone on the streets, unloved, in the gutter somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But then if you think about it, it's like, okay, where in that line is the faulty logic, right? And it's like, so anxiety and depression tend to be really, really rational. It's like, oh, no one's going to, like, I like my alone time. I like my alone time, this is good, I'm staying alone, right? I'm reflecting, I'm getting my stuff done, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, oh, I don't need to reach out, don't need to reach out, don't need to reach out. You start feeling it, you start ruminating potentially, and go like, here's all the bad things that are happening. And it reinforces what, of course, look, I'm alone. I'm not reaching out to anyone. No one wants to reach out to me. And especially depression and sadness has a tendency of doing this, where it's like, this is kind of anecdotal. With sadness and depression, it's like, well, if I withdraw, right, then people will notice that I'm no longer there and they're going to reach out to me. And then I can tell that people care because I haven't reached out to anyone. But the people who cared about me has reached out to me. And if no one's done that, it's like, well, of course no one reaches out to me. Like, no one cares, right? It's really, really like rational in its kind of its own way to reinforce
rational,
you
but
should be
also a
sad.
little unrational. It's at this.
Well, you're not realizing that everyone has a life. They're all busy. They're not going to be thinking about every friend that they have every single day.
Oh, and especially in the
wondering how they're
winter,
doing.
like everyone's all in the same boat. We're all like kind of, I guess, almost expecting the same thing, is
Yes.
for each other to be connecting with each other. But everyone is all feeling disconnected as it is, because we're already disconnected by the environment of disconnection that is seasonal depression in the first place.
Well, it's also one of the things, one of my colleagues say this, like if you also think about it, if you go to school, you work or something like that, like when do like the normal times are? It's like 9 a.m., 9-ish, and when do you get off work? Around 4:35. And in the winter time, it's dark both times, right? So you're driving into work or going to school classes, whatever, in the dark, and you're leaving in the dark. And our brains are like, well, it's dark, it's not safe, we need to like huddle, like hunker down, right? So like trying to do things gets a lot harder because of like we're afraid of the dark, right? And then that's why when the seasons change and it starts like, oh, you're going home and it's actually light outside, let's go and call someone or reach out to someone and do something, because our brains are like, oh, it's not dark, we have time to do something.
It's almost like your brain, especially when like spring starts to come in and we're getting more of that light, your brain is the one that's telling you, oh, here's some energy because it's still nighttime outside. Use that to go do that thing you haven't done all winter.
It's getting warmer, so you don't have to spend 10 minutes bundling up first and planning out, where you're gonna go if you get stuck in the snow or whatever. It's just a little bit more freeing to make those plans.
Yeah, so we're just literally
into
like
something.
programmed to like easily program. It seems like it's almost like our human programming makes us all just susceptible to seasonal depression.
Yeah, it makes us susceptible to, from, even though we've evolved and we haven't evolved that far from hunter-gatherers, right? Like there's a lot of the stuff and a lot of research and a lot of people talk about like the limbic system and the emotional responses and all that stuff, where a lot of our reactions are based on survival, right? Like what will keep us going. But as society has evolved and we've evolved and we're not like in immediate threat, we still respond like if we're in immediate threat, right? So like it's dark outside, it's not safe, there's going to be wolves coming in, right? So we have to stay in. Right? When it's lighter, we have more ability to do it, even though like the metaphorical wolves are like deadlines and obligations.
Random emergencies that you can't foresee.
Yeah.
So it's like almost like our survival responses can, for some people in the winter, create that domino effect that's leading them to go home, not do those things that would probably help them get through some of that seasonal depression, and then having that then produce the depression itself, which then continues to fuel that exact same cycle.
Yeah.
Kind of, right?
Yeah, like again, this is why what's probably more susceptible if you already experienced depression, and then you're probably more susceptible because it's triggering out that cycle, and it's harder for you to do all the stuff that maintains your mood, right? And you have to like kind of force yourself to do it, and it's not automatic, right? So it does kind of make it harder to do stuff like that.
That's our timer. So that's great. This has been a great conversation. I just wanted to ask you, Dee, if there was anything else you wanted to say on the topic, or any thoughts you wanted to wrap up.
No. Hopefully, if people found this useful, or if insightful, or helpful, or interesting, or fun, or not entirely boring, would be. I'll aim low. And thank you for having me. It was a pleasure and honor.
Yeah, it was great. I had a great time kind of talking, just figuring out a little bit more about kind of how the flow and the pattern of seasonal depression works for all different types of people, because it really does seem like it's quite a universal situation that can easily be applied in minor and major ways to pretty much all of us, right?
So as far as like one of the questions I had was regards to the differences between seasonal and sort of your original flavor, major depressive disorder. It seems like the seasonal is a lot more directly related to the physical factors, such as the sunlight being less, the cold, the whatever, even just the change in season, that in between part.
So kind of like a really oversimplification of complex psychological and emotional situations, right? Like all emotions are normal, all emotions serve a purpose, all emotions have a function. It's normal to be sad, it's normal to be happy, it's normal to be angry, it's normal to be scared, it's normal to be proud, right? It's all normal. When it becomes like diagnostic, like a label, like a clinical diagnosis or something like that, it's when the reaction or emotion doesn't meet the context of the situation anymore, or it's too long, it's lasting too long. So if you're suffering from if you're experiencing depression, something like depression, there's like 22 or 21 diagnostic criteria, and you have to meet X amount of them for a Y amount of time to be diagnosed with depression. And then when you're not, doctor can't diagnose. I have to say that very clear. My college doesn't allow me to diagnose. And when you meet the things with seasonal affective disorder, that becomes a context. It's like, oh, here's a trigger that's triggering this, right? It's like, here's a situation that's like a contextual situation that's you always lapse into it.
But so it's less clinical?
It's not less clinical. This is why I said only like 0.5 to about 3% are diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder, diagnosed, and then it's more so like, oh, here's one other criteria that you've met on the diagnostic criteria that makes it seasonal affective disorder, because you have this experience when the seasons change.
And because it's directly correlated.
Because it's directly correlated. Yeah, it's just adds on to it.
True.
Great.
Very interesting.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, yeah, I think we're wrapping up. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Dee. And thank you everyone for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Cool. Awesome.